A lot of mess behind me. Don't pay any attention. This is the theme. Okay, Google, turn on reading lamp.
All right, turning the reading lamp on.
My mother blessed me with this book and some other books. And maple sugar is part of the theme. Maple sugar for Windyfoot. I still had my YouTube stream running there for my poker guy, Brad. Copyright 1950. 15th printing 1971. I was born that year. All right. Table of contents. We didn't have that in the last book. Photos. We didn't have many of those in the last book. Sweetwater. Early on Saturday morning of the 11th of March, Toby Clark raced through the flying white storm toward his father's stable. These great light flakes were sugar snow. It was maple syrup weather at last. His Shetland pony, Windyfoot, heard him coming and began to dance and whinny before he passed the half-thawed water box. When he opened the stable door, he called, "All right, Windy, I'll be there in a minute." Windy stamped impatiently and snorted. Toby hurried to the box stall and flung his arms around the dappled pony's neck. "Easy does it, Windy, easy." "Whoosh," said Windyfoot, nuzzling Toby's shoulder. "Stop breathing in my ear," Toby laughed, stroking the pony's nose. "Did you smell the sugar snow? You're going to have some maple sugar on snow, and that's even better than strawberry ice cream." He gave Windy his oats, cleaned out his stall, and put in fresh straw. "All right, boy, you wait until I attend to everybody else. You're not the only pebble on the beach. I mean, the only pebble on the farm." He gave Windy's black mane an affectionate tug, and Windy rolled one eye at him. "Eat your breakfast. I'll be back in no time." Windy's hooves tattooed, "I am so the only pebble." "You are," Toby yelled over his shoulder. "You're the best pony in the world." The racket in Windy's stall subsided. Toby thought of his 12th birthday last July when Dad had given him Windyfoot. It had been the most wonderful day of his life. It had been even better than the day in the fall when Windy had won the pony race at the Webster County Fair. Windy had beaten Jiggs, the black pony, owned by Tish Burnham, his friend who lived downstate, and Whistlestop, the pinto pony belonging to Jimmy Slater, who lived a mile from Tish. Toby grinned to himself as he thought of Tish and Jimmy. They were certainly swell kids. Tish was 12, the same age that he was, but Jimmy was 15 and wanted to become a farmer as seriously as Toby wanted to become an artist and paint horses. Tish wanted to be a doctor. He felt so pleased about the sugar snow that he began to sing as he went down the stable. It was a song that Cliff, the hired man, had taught him. He didn't know where Cliff had learned it, but it was an old English song. A boy, he had an auger. It bored 2 holes at once. A boy, he had an auger. It bored 2 holes at once. And some were eating popcorn, and some were eating pickles, and the Q is silent as in fish. He bellowed happily. The fun of the song was that you could change the last line to anything. He sang it over, ending up at Serena stall warbling, and the Q is silent as in Serena. Serena, the gentle, sway-backed brown horse on whom Toby and Betsy, now 9, and Johnny, now 6, had each learned to ride, regarded him with patience. He fed her, stroked her nose, and gave her a rather grimy lump of sugar which he dug from his ski pants pocket. "Dessert for breakfast," he told her, and one dark eye winked at him as she accepted the sugar with velvet lips. Toby hurried on to feed Jake, the family driving horse, and Tilly and Tossie, the Belgian farm team. He gave Tilly and Tossie an extra breakfast because they would have to draw the maple sledge today. Carrying the buckets and the evaporator pan and the sap storage tanks up the hill, everything had been thoroughly cleaned and scalded a week ago, so there was nothing to do now but haul the equipment up and tap the trees. He and Wendy would take the smaller sledge and do the tapping while Dad and Cliff got the sugar house ready. He was very proud that Dad trusted him with the tapping. It wasn't an easy job, and he had bungled it badly when Dad showed him how to do it 2 years ago when he was 10. You had to use a 3/8-inch bit in the bitstock and bore a hole with a slight slant upward so that the sap would come down and drip from the tree into the bucket. And the hole had to be 1.5 inches or 2 inches deep, no more, no less. It was careful and difficult work, but Toby loved it. "Oh, blow the man down, sailor," Toby hollered. He dashed back to give Wendy a pat and ran for the barn. Dad was pouring a pail of milk through the strainer into a big can. "Good morning, Tobias." "Morning, Dad. I've fed everybody." He nodded toward the stable. "Come here a minute," Dad murmured. "What is it, Dad?" He could tell by the seriousness of Dad's eyes that something was wrong. "Cliff," said Dad quietly, "has the wanderfoot again. You know how he always gets it at the first run of sap." Toby chuckled. "Sure, I know, but he never goes anywhere. I never know when he will, and this time he has it bad, so don't pester him today." "I won't," Toby promised. He and Dad grinned at each other like conspirators. Toby reached for his own milking stool and hustled to help finish the chores. As they milked, Dad and Cliff, who had been the Clark family's hired man ever since Toby could remember, talked back and forth about the weather. "It's starting off first rate," said Dad. "Sugar snow and a northeast wind." "Yep," agreed Cliff's slow voice. "But if that wind switches to the southwest, it's goodbye, Liza Jane." Dad laughed. "Don't worry about it switching until it switches, Cliff." "Done it before," muttered Cliff. "Sure," said Dad, and it switched right back to northeast again. "And if that's 3 years ago you're talking about, we had the best run of sap in the last of March that I ever hoped to see." "Can't tell what it's going to do," persisted Cliff gloomily. "Now you take when I was a young feller up Hawk River way. Wind fell overnight, and the darn trees all froze up tight for a week, and there wasn't enough sap after that to keep a wood mouse from dying of thirst." Toby snorted at the thought of a mouse trying to drink out of a maple bucket. As he went to pour his full milk pail into the 5-gallon can, Toby's 9-year-old sister, Betsy, her brown, yellow ribbon pigtails flopping, dashed into the barn. "Toby!" "Morning, Bets." Followed her, stumbling, his 6-year-old brother, Johnny, his fists full of snow. "Snow, snow, oh, sugar snow, sugar snow. See what I got? What do you know?" he chanted, holding out his hands toward Toby. Then he began eating, first from one hand and then the other. Excuse me. "What's it taste like?" Toby asked. "Spring," declared Johnny. "Have some." "No, thanks." "Toby, have you fed Chris?" Betsy asked. "Not yet." She began to run toward the calf pen. Johnny trotting after her. "No gumdrops," Toby shouted. "Of course not," she yelled back indignantly. Toby chuckled as he returned to the cows. Chris, that noble-kneed young one, the tan bull calf, had been born on Christmas Eve. And Dad had given him to Betsy as a Christmas present from him and the cow, Georgette. Betsy loved Chris with such devotion that this last Thursday the little bull had gone off his feet. Cliff had found out that Betsy had persuaded the calf, goodness knew how, to eat a huge slab of apple pie. Chris had promptly developed a violent stomachache. He was recovering nicely, but it would take a couple of days, Toby figured, before Chris would kick up his heels again. Dad had attempted to impress on Bets the fact that calves, no matter how beloved, could not be given such outlandish things as apple pie. Bets had admitted to trying to feed Chris other odd things before, but had said sadly that he didn't seem to like buttered gingerbread or even gumdrops. He had, said Betsy, simply shaken them out of his mouth. "Don't wonder," Dad had said while Cliff had gone and leaned against the haymow ladder, his shoulders twitching with the submerged laughter, his face against his arm. Chris, who let Betsy tie colored ribbons around his neck and on his gawky legs and tagged her around the barn like a puppy, apparently balked at some things. How she had stuffed the pie down him was beyond Toby, and Bets refused to tell. She'd gone around since Thursday looking pale, suffering as violently from remorse as Chris was suffering from his stomachache. Toby shook his head and gave up. Betsy was the nicest sister a boy could have, but she certainly had some crazy ideas sometimes. "Has Mom finished scalding the sugar molds, Toby?" Dad asked. "When I came through the kitchen, she said she hadn't quite finished," Toby answered, "but she'll get them done today." "Well, there's no great rush," Dad said. "The gallon cans for Mike at the village store are already up at the sugar house. Mike says this year Benson in the city will take 6 50-gallon steel drums from us too, if we have a good run." "Hooray for the Indians," Toby said as he milked Georgette. "Hooray," echoed Dad with fervor. Johnny ran down the barn and stopped behind him. "What Indians? What did the Indians do?" he asked excitedly. "You tell him," Toby said. "Dad, I'm busy." Toby answered, "They discovered maple syrup, that's what." "When?" "Oh, a long time before white men came to America. Before the Pilgrims, before Columbus, before Eric the Red, and Indians were here ages before that, and there's a lot of Indian legends about maple syrup." "Where was I?" asked Johnny. "You weren't here yet any more than Columbus." "Why? Oh, for gosh sake," said Toby. Betsy came up and patted Georgette. "Your calf is feeling better," she told the cow solemnly. "He isn't so droopy this morning, and he ate quite a lot." "Barnacles on a bulrush, that, Chris," exploded Cliff from behind a cow. "If you expect him to get grown at all, you've got to quit feeding him junk." "Gumdrops, apple pie," said Cliff. "What do you think he is, a goat?" Johnny jumped up and down. "Toby, go on about the Indians. How did they find out about maple syrup?" Toby felt like a talking history book. One of the legends says that some Indian broke a branch or a root of a maple tree in the springtime when he was thirsty, so he'd drink its sap. "Oh my, yes," said Johnny rapturously. "Yes, what?" asked Toby. His small brother blinked merry eyes at him and chortled maple sap in Indian's tongue, made him give a heap big yum. There he goes again, said Betsy hopelessly, making up songs. Poof, retorted Johnny, you make up stories about mice, don't you? Toby got to his feet. The Indians called the sap sweet water, and they found out how to boil it down to syrup. They used to boil their venison in it, said Dad. What's venison? Betsy wanted to know. And what did they cook it in? Deer meat. They had pots made out of clay or bark. I heard tell once, said Cliff loudly, some old mighty hunter was out a-hunting and his squaw was cooking his supper, boiling the meat in maple sap for the first time because a tree grew right by the wigwam and she didn't feel like traipsing out to the spring for water. Well, sir, just like a woman, she got to fussing about something else, sewing beads on shoes or tidying up the wigwam or something, and plumb forgot the meat, so the sap boiled down, and come suppertime, what did she dish up but meat and maple syrup? And the Indian hunter, what's his name? Cliff pushed back his Canadian cap and scratched his forehead. Wokesis, I guess it was. Well, he liked it so much they kept on boiling the syrup down, and by gory, they got maple sugar. And they went tearing off and told everybody, and all the Indians got pure crazy about maple syrup. Can't say I blame them. Dad, Betsy grabbed his arm. Look out, you'll make me spill this milk. Her cheeks were pink. May I help you on the sugar hill today, please? Help doing what? Dad pretended to be gruff. I can carry buckets to hang on the spouts while Toby taps the trees, she cried eagerly. I won't get in the way. Me too, shouted Johnny. Dad, me too. I can carry buckets. I can carry anything. Well, I don't know, said Dad thoughtfully. The snow was still pretty deep in the woods and getting deeper. You'd be up to your ears in no time, Johnny. Oh, no, I wouldn't. I'd wear my snowshoes. Dad gazed down to their upturned faces and grinned. I guess you could make a try at it, he said slowly. Yow! Betsy hugged him. Scoop then and have your breakfast and get ready. As the Clark children kicked happily through the snow toward the White House, the collie Ribs bounced wildly in front of them, unable to make up his mind whether to rush or walk. Breakfast, Ribs! Toby called, tossing a soft snowball at him, and the puppy galloped ahead and thumped his tail with enthusiasm at the woodshed door. Poke, the black cat, wearing the scarlet collar with its shiny bell that Cliff had given her for Christmas, tinkled delicately from the woodpile and nudged Ribs. Ribs stood aside like a gentleman and let her enter the warm, cheerful kitchen first. Then they both made a cat and dog line for their dishes under the sink. Toby sniffed hungrily. Oh boy, sausage and potato pancakes! He hurtled across the kitchen to wash his hands. Chapter 2, mañana.